All set? All right, excellent. Hey, everybody, we are about to go live here. Enjoy the show. It's going to be a good one. All right, here we go, Mark. Hey, everyone, you're listening to Business Minds Coffee Chat, and I am your host, Jay Scherr, and I am super excited today. I've got a wonderful guest in the studio with me. My guest is a proud mom of two. She's originally from Grand Rapids, Michigan, lived in Winter Springs for 5 years, and has made Palm Coast her home since about 2003. I take that back. Let me re-record that. I'm sorry, Mark. That's actually 2023, not 2003. My goodness, Jay. Sorry about that, my man. Let me do that one more time. Okay. All right. Here we go. One more time. Can I just start with my guest? Okay. My guest is a proud mom of two. She's originally from Grand Rapids, Michigan, lived in Winter Springs for 5 years, and has made Palm Coast her home since 2023. She earned a bachelor's degree of fine arts and design from the Art Institute of Seattle and is a veteran of the U.S. Army. When she's not working, you'll likely find her drawing and writing poetry. Please welcome the founder and editor-in-chief of Significant Magazine, Charlie Brazier. Charlie, it is so great to see you. Thank you so much for being here today.
I'm happy to be here. Happy to be here.
Well, fantastic. Well, I am really looking forward to this conversation today. So we have seen each other before, but we have not had the opportunity to have a deep conversation, and that is the purpose of today's conversation, to really get to know more about you and more about your origin story and how you came to be the person who you are today. So I thought maybe a good starting point for us would be for you to share maybe one or two words that you would use to describe yourself. One or two words.
Committed, strong.
Ooh, committed and strong. Ooh, those are good words. All right. So let's touch on strong for a moment. Give us an example, if you will, and let's wind the clock back. So give us an example from your youth of where you exhibited strength.
Waking up every day with 10 sisters and 5 brothers.
Ooh, that'll do it.
It did it.
My goodness.
And I went to a Catholic school, double whammy.
My goodness. Okay. All
That
right.
made me strong, really.
So 10 sisters and 5 brothers and Catholic school. Now, was this all in Grand Rapids?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And where do you fall in terms of age compared to your siblings?
I'm right in the middle with my twin sister. Yes.
Okay, you have a twin sister,
Yes,
and you're
I
right
do.
in the middle.
Yes.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about what life was like for you growing up in Grand Rapids with such a large family. What was that like for you?
I yearned to be an only child.
Did you really?
We were always busy. It was always something to do. It was great. It wasn't bad, but we were always busy, So as an adult, I could appreciate privacy.
Okay.
And that's why I'm so private today, probably.
Okay.
But it was good growing up with 10 sisters and 5 brothers. It had its sibling rivalry, the normal ups and downs of a big family, but it was good, I suppose, because I talked to a lot of people that are the only child, and they were like, I wish I had 10 sisters and 5 brothers.
My goodness. So were you a good kid? Were you rambunctious at all? What was your personality like as a young person?
I was a very quiet person.
Mhm.
I was quiet. I was a very quiet child. I
Okay.
was.
What kind of things interested you at that early age in life?
Pretty much the same as now. My mom used to tell me I start drawing the day I could pick up a spoon.
Mm.
So I was pretty much a natural born artist, and I did art, I did fashion and design like I do now. I used to sew clothes for my brothers and sisters and paint the portraits of my brothers and sisters.
No kidding.
Yes, I did. So they were my guinea pigs. So
Interesting.
yeah, so they kept me busy. I really honestly did. So I did that from a very young age and never stopped doing it. Well, when I got sick, I stopped doing it for a little while, but I always got my mojo back one way or another.
Okay, so we're going to talk about that here in a moment because I want to touch on that a little bit. But before we do that, tell me a little bit about mom and dad. So when you think about your mother today, was there a particular lesson or something that she shared with you, or something that you saw in her that you carry with you today that just resonates so strongly?
Oh yeah, she was like a true Michelle Obama. My mom was very strong. She was very determined. She was very strict. She was very proper. She made sure we went to etiquette school, and the girls were very well groomed, and the boys were boys. She was very. We had a lot of structure in the household
Mm,
because of her and my father. My mother grew up in Chicago,
okay.
and my father was from Alabama. But we have a lot of mixed heritage in our family, so we were taught to love equally, to reach for the stars at a very young age.
Mm.
We were taught to perform and to be the best at whatever you do. My dad used to say, I don't care what you want to be as long as you're good at it. So
So, okay, so your mom very strong. You use like Michelle Obama as kind of the example, right? Something for us to think about today and see your mom
yes.
in her. What about your dad? What again, same question that I asked about your mom. What was one of the big lessons that you took away from your dad?
My dad left home when he was 8 years old. So he was a self made man, self educated. And one thing that I took away from him is he never gave up. Is because when we were growing up, when we went to the Catholic schools and we had the best of everything,
Hmm.
I didn't realize back then it was because he didn't. And I think that I can't confirm this, but I really think that he sent us to the schools. And when we got home, we were educating him because I can remember him asking me, "What is this word? And what is so and so?" And we never understood that until we became adults. But he was a very determined and strong and stand up for your rights. Both of them were activists, from my dad was from Selma, Alabama. And so, I had family members that marched with Martin Luther King. My mom's family was in the newspaper in medical, so we had very strong backgrounds and they were just taught us to be the same as they were, fight for your rights, love equally. And, you know, they taught us good values, I like to think.
So you served in the U.S. Army. Did you come from a family of veterans?
Yes. Oh boy, did I. I had somebody in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, my dad was in the military, so when we grew up, when I went into the military, first of all, let me start over. When I went into the military, I felt like I'd already been in the military growing up in the
Mm.
household we were in because they were very strict like that. And this Catholic school was very strict. So it wasn't that difficult for me.
So what age were you when you went into the Army?
When I went into the Army, I was going into 24,
24. Okay.
23, 24.
And was there an expectation that you were going to serve in the Army, or was it something that drew you in yourself?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I was like the typical child, I think, trying to find myself.
Mm.
I think life was not enough for me back then. I look at it
Explain
now.
that to me.
Ah, I didn't know who I was.
Okay.
I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I knew what I wanted to be, but I always wanted more. If something was missing in my life, and I never could get it. I couldn't get that until I went into the military and things happened. And I think I can blame it on God. God opened the door for me and made me see the light, made me realize who I was, what my purpose in life was,
Mm.
and what I needed to do. for myself and for people, you know.
So let me ask you then, what was it about the Army or the experience that you had at that stage in life that opened your eyes to what your purpose was and who you were, that you began to discover yourself? What was it that happened or the experience that caused that to occur for you?
Well, when I was growing up, because I grew up with 10 sisters and 5 brothers, I went through a lot of sibling rivalry. And one of the big issues that I went through is I think that this is something that I think a lot of people do not talk about. But I'm going to talk about it because that's who I am.
Hmm.
That's why I'm a reporter.
Hmm.
Generational trauma. I went through abuse when I was growing up, and a lot of people would not talk about it.
What type of abuse?
Sexual abuse, when I was growing up. And
Okay.
it changed my life. It caused me to I had a survival tactic of losing my memory whenever I went through something abusive or something terrible, and I did that for several years without notice. Did not have any idea I was doing it until I got into the military and I went through abuse in the military. Yeah, and
Let
yeah,
me hit pause for just one moment. So the abuse that you suffered as a young person. Now we're talking you
as a
were a
child,
child.
yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Eh, So you suffered trauma as a child and you were having these episodes of blacking out, but you
Blackouts.
didn't know it until you were in your 20s
That's
when
correct.
you're in the army. Okay. How how was that? How did that become evident? What was it that at that point made you realize that this was happening to you? And then I also want to hear from you how you were able to address the trauma that you experienced, what you went through, whether it's counseling, whatever that happened to be. I'd love for you to share with us how you were able to get some help to process that. So, first, how was it brought to your attention that you were having these blackouts?
I actually didn't know until I was in my late 30s or 40s. I
Wow.
honestly did not. I had no idea. I continued to do it in the military.
Mm.
And then as I became sick, I got misdiagnosed with lupus at the age of like 24, 25. And about a couple of years after I got out of the military. And so I was very sick going through the military. I kept getting ill, and they couldn't figure out why. And then after I got out of the military in '88, they said, "You have lupus," and it incapacitated me. So I still kept doing that every time I went through the trauma of the medical issues. I still kept blacking out, but I had no idea I was blacking out. And I start going to counseling through the VA. Went through counseling, start getting help. I always stayed in counseling. Let me first say that because I was determined to figure out. I always knew something was wrong. You understand? I knew it was a
Sure.
part of me missing somewhere.
Right.
And
But you didn't know what it
yeah, but I didn't know
was.
what it was. But
Sure.
my instincts kept telling me, okay, something's not right here. So I always was in counseling, but nobody could determine that I had lost, actually was forgetting. I determined that because I started writing my life story
Mm.
in my early 30s, well, late 30s to 40s, but I never could finish it. And as I kept trying to write it, I eventually got to the point where I realized, hey, I'm forgetting. This is what's happening to me. So I kept going to counseling. I went to counseling for over 20 years. Kept going to counseling, and I think that that definitely made me understand who I was, to put the pieces of the puzzle together and say, I don't want this to happen to anybody else. I got to make a change. I got to find a way to help women.
Hmm.
So I had already been teaching classes for women in transition in college all the way back in the early 90s,
Transitioning
from divorce,
from
rape,
military and
assault,
trauma.
military,
Okay.
anything in transition. So for some reason, I was always drawn to helping people,
Mm.
and I don't think I ever realized that I was helping people that were like me. I just did not get that I was doing that. And once I figured that out, I was on fire. I just,
You
I
discovered
just,
your purpose and
yes,
your
that was my
why.
purpose. Yeah.
Amazing. So we're going to hit pause on this conversation because we're going to take a brief break to thank our amazing sponsors. My friends, don't you go anywhere. You're listening to Business Minds Coffee Chat. We will be right back. All right, great job. You doing okay?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
fine. I'm
All right,
fine.
fantastic. All right. So, a lot to unpack.
Yeah, but that
Okay.
is crazy because I honestly didn't know I was forgetting. I had no idea. But think about this: if you forget, how are you going to know if you keep forgetting every time you have a trauma,
Hmm.
you're never going to remember after that trauma that you forgot. Does
Yeah.
that make sense? You know what I'm
But you're
saying?
writing. You were starting to
I
write
kept
things
writing,
down.
writing, writing, writing. It was just, I don't know, call it a niche. This is what, I'm not bragging on myself, but this is what made me a great reporter. It's because in the military, they taught me to pay attention to detail.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So paying attention to detail, I kept saying, what am I missing here? I really kept saying this every time I would go to counseling. I felt unsatisfied. I felt very unsatisfied, like something was missing somewhere, but I didn't know what.
Yeah.
And it was me. I knew it was a part of me missing. It's
Yeah.
almost like, I mean, like, I don't know, like having a twin and not knowing her, but there's a part of you out there somewhere. You know what I mean? You've seen stories and twins disconnected. It's
Sure.
almost like something like that. I knew
Okay.
there was a part of me that was missing. And as I started writing, I would write and I would stop. And I could never finish the story.
Mm.
It literally took me from my mid 30s, well, towards the end of my 30s, all the way up until I think I just finished the book about a year ago. But I started writing it when I was in the hospital for about a year in New Mexico in 2000. Well, not start writing it, but I got back to writing it. I would write it, stop. I started really getting into it when I was in New Mexico in about 2014. And I was stuck between a rock and a hard place because I was really, really sick. My heart had stopped at the time.
You suffered an attack, did you
Yeah.
not?
Yeah, I suffered an attack and my heart stopped.
Okay.
And so when I came back to reality and I was trying to deal with the PTSD, my pain, I was in so much extreme pain for over 20 years that it was to the point where I just felt like I couldn't deal with it.
Mm.
Something always pushed me though and made me keep going.
Hmm.
So I woke up one day and I said, I gotta write, gotta write. So I got notebook, start journalizing again. And then it hit me. I said, I remember going through counseling and them saying, I think you're forgetting. And so I start remembering, this is not funny, but it is funny. My sisters and brothers used to call me Forgetful Jones from Sesame Street. Right? When we were growing up, because I forgot so much. So my nickname was Forgetful
Oh
Jones.
my gosh.
So then I started thinking about it. I was like, yes, I do. Now I said, so I was focused and trying to remember.
Yeah.
And see, the VA tried to push me to remember, but I did go through courses where I had to try to get exposed and remember, but I don't think it worked very well. I got really sick and I kept having,
Exposure therapy.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
too much for me. It was
Yeah.
too much for my heart because I was going through the transition of my heart healing and all that.
Mm.
Well, I was weak. I would get like have like anxiety attacks and just have it was that it would start affecting my health and my fibromyalgia and everything because it was just too much for me.
Yeah.
So I started figuring out ways to do it. I said the doctor said, why don't you write about it since you like to write? So I did exactly that, and that's pretty much what saved me. As I
Stunning.
wrote, things just started coming out more and more and more and more.
Incredible.
I started investigating, talking to my sisters about it, my family,
And you found out
and
that
here I am.
these things
Yeah,
actually were happening, but they were
yeah,
memories that were either
yes.
suppressed or
Suppressed
amazing.
memories, without a
Yeah.
doubt.
Amazing. All right. Got a lot to talk about. All right. Mark, we all set on your end? Okay. All right, we're back. And again, you're listening to Business Minds Coffee Chat, and I am in the studio today with my very special guest, Charlie Brigier. We are having a great conversation here. We're going to continue that conversation right now. So, Charlie, before we took the break, we were talking a bit about your early life, some of the challenges that you faced. You certainly had suffered some trauma throughout different parts of your life, and you finally discovered more about yourself and about your purpose for being, right? Your purpose and your why and your ability and your being drawn to helping people, right? And so I want to touch on something here that you had mentioned early part of the conversation where you had said that you were sick, right? And you mentioned that you were misdiagnosed with lupus. Tell us about the experience that you had. You suffered a your heart stopped, basically, is what happened. And this happened, was it during an attack or the result of an attack?
No, I had gotten attacked. Someone attacked me in my apartment when I lived in New Mexico,
Okay.
and it flared up. Forgetful moment or PTSD. I don't know what to call it. Was nervous breakdown, whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
I went into the hospital and admitted myself in the hospital and told them I had been attacked. While I was in the hospital for the PTSD, they gave me the wrong medication, and my heart stopped
Oh
at the
my.
VA Medical Center in New Mexico in
Wow.
Albuquerque. And so my heart stopped. I ended up getting an ablation, and I had caught sepsis in the hospital. It sounded almost like this could be a movie. you know?
Charlie, this is really, really.
So during my time I was recuperating, I was there for almost a year inside the VA. And while I was recuperating, everybody kept saying, "What are you writing?" I start writing again. And everybody kept saying, "What are you writing? What are you doing?" And I said, I'm creating my company. And they were like, "What company?" I said, "I'm going to create an empire." And they were laughing at me, going, "Yeah, right, whatever." So while they were laughing at me, I was doing research. But I really did go through a very difficult time mentally and health wise. And the doctors at the VA, they did help me so well with my PTSD and help me to find myself and pretty much discover who I really was and what I was forgetting and how to get my life back.
So, through all of that,
Mhm.
writing, journaling has really enabled you. It was a tool and a strategy that you were able to use to not only discover those suppressed memories, those things that for whatever reason you just were not able to put the pieces of your life together, but you were able to find those missing areas. You were able to
Mhm.
discover more about yourself.
Yes.
And obviously, to the point that you made earlier, that I mean, you've been writing and creating since the time that you were a little child. So that's a gift that you have that really has become a lifesaver for you and a means of you being able to help and serve others as well through your writing and through the magazine that you created and all the other things that you do. So tell me what the experience is like for you knowing that your words and your story are impacting other people's lives and that you have the ability to be able to help others and transform other people who are having a difficult time.
Okay, let me first say that when I start writing, I didn't start writing until I got a little older, until I started getting so stressed out, I had to let it go some way. And that writing was a safe spot for me because I had writers in the family. And so I would get incapacitated for so many months at a time. I just couldn't function. I couldn't use my arms or anything, my legs. I was just my extremities, period.
Hmm.
I was so debilitated that I was almost like giving in and giving up. I was almost giving up. And so, being an artist and being in the creative field, I just found a way to work around that. So, I would wake up sometimes I was like, again, incapacitated for so long. I would come to about maybe, let's say, 2, 3 months later, I would go out in society and people would say, "Charlie, where have you been?" And I'd lie and say, "Oh, I've been on vacation. I've been out of town. I've been really busy. Made up stuff. Just made up the
Sure.
story." Right. So then I found that I was watching the news quite a bit to catch up with society. I kept every time I would wake up, I would get out of bed and I get better for a week or so. I would catch up by watching the news. So that was one of the reasons I became a reporter, because I did so much research and became so good at it, to save myself basically and to catch up with society, because I wouldn't embarrass myself in public because I was so far behind. I
Hmm.
became naive when I would wake up out of these incidents of bad health. And so I start writing. And as I started writing, I saw that my voice was a strong, powerful tool, and that people were listening. And they always listened, even when I did my workshops, because I think people didn't understand that the reason I was doing it was because I was helping them, was helping me. You understand what I'm
Sure,
saying?
absolutely.
And maybe I didn't even realize that at the time. So every time I write an article and every time I go out there and I do anything to support any organization or anything to do with anything in my life, period, I only hope that I'm saving a life. And that's what significant magazines, that's what our label is we save lives through creative expression. I'm really, really very serious about that. I try to even talk in the magazine about experiences that I've been through
Hmm.
and things that I know that are still affecting people, and especially women and people and veterans that have PTSD, have went through generational trauma, have went through any type of physical or mental abuse, or suffer functioning. I think I definitely didn't understand how the things that disabled people go through until I became so unfunctionable. That I was so very disabled that I was getting discriminated against and taken
Mm.
advantage of. And so every time something terrible happened to me, I honestly didn't want it to happen to anyone else. And that's why I started doing the magazine and came up with the ideas that I came up with. I did my research on all the best magazines around the country, what made them successful, and how I could make it almost like a healing magazine and an inspiring, something that was inspiring, healing, and encouraging. And that was why I did it, because I honestly do want to save lives with the articles we write and with the content that I put in there.
I love it. It kind of
Hmm.
takes me back to the two words that you used to describe yourself at the very top of the show: committed and strong. Right? You have to be committed to the
Yes.
thing that you're doing and strong enough to be able to carry it through and let nothing stop you. And it kind of also speaks to your mom and your dad, right? I mean, those
Hmm.
things that you learned, those things that you saw as a young child that have continued to resonate within your heart and within your soul. That's amazing. So, a question for you: if you were able to sit down today, I mean, since you write, since you're great at research and asking questions and so forth, if you were able to sit down with any one person today, any one person who's either living or no longer with us, and you could ask that one person one question and one question only. First, who is the person that you would want to sit down with? And secondly, what is the one question that you would want to ask?
I don't know. That's a very difficult question. Let's see who. So many options. Let's see, who would I sit down with and what question would I ask? I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Being a Catholic, I would say God. I sit down with God every day, but if I could sit down with God in person, I would. I wouldn't ask him a question. I would be more like, "Am I on the right path?
Mm.
What should I do?" Well, I guess the question would be, "What else can I do to make it better? What else can I do to be a more powerful voice, to make changes in other people's lives, to make them to help? What else can I do to help other people?"
Okay. That's a big
It would be
question. That's a
yes.
big question to
Uh,
ask. Do you feel today that I mean, along those lines, do you feel today that you are where you are meant to be? So, meaning that, do you feel like you have the powerful voice that you need? Is there more that you're trying to accomplish? Do you feel like you're, there's a gap somewhere between who you are today and who you know you should be? Or
Yes.
are you living up to your full potential?
No, not at all.
Not at all.
I'm about 5% right now.
Oh, did you hear that, my friends? Everything that
I
you've
need to be
done.
100%. No,
Okay.
I really think I'm about 5% because there's so much more that I could do and say and help people with right now.
Okay.
There's if I could get the word out there about how to be stronger when you're disabled or when you're going through the things that I've been through, trauma. If I could do this on a national level, which by the way, that's why I made the magazine international. But if I could go on radio shows more often
Hmm.
and go on TV more often and say exactly what I'm saying to you and have people call me and say this is how you can help, that's when I'm 100%. I
Okay,
haven't got
so
there yet.
I'm gonna have to push back on you. What is holding you back? Tell me one thing that's holding you back from doing exactly what you just said, because you're on a radio show right now that is listened to globally. So first and foremost, you're accomplishing some of that, but most importantly, what's holding you back from being on national shows today?
I'm only one person.
Oh, but
I'm
you're
not
one
quick enough.
yeah, but you're one person who's committed and one person who is strong and has an incredible story and a strong voice. So don't give me that you're only one person, because I'm telling you right now, you're one person who can make anything happen when you put your mind to it. You've already shown yourself that you're capable of doing that, and there is nothing that can stop you. So I expect to see your name in lights on multiple shows here coming up and amplifying all the incredible things that you're able to do to help other people. So, as we are wrapping up our conversation, I would love it if you would give all of us, including me, one challenge. What is one thing that you would challenge us to do starting today?
I would challenge everybody to do what everybody is. Well, this has already went through the media and people have already talked about it. Just each one teach one, and everyone helps someone.
Mm,
Everyone helps someone throughout the day. Sometimes I go into the store and I see somebody that doesn't have money to pay for something, and I pay for it for them. Just do a kind act. I challenge everybody to do a kind act on a daily basis
I love that.
to
That's
a stranger,
there you go.
for a stranger, for a
For a
stranger.
stranger. There you go.
Yes,
Without the expectation of
that's
receiving
right.
something in
Just
return.
do a kind act.
That is so good. Charlie, I want to
Mm.
thank you so very much for joining us today on Business Minds Coffee Chat. I know we just scratched the surface here. I know there's a lot more to your story, but I really do appreciate you being candid and allowing the conversation to go in different directions. And I'm grateful for you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm happy to
Absolutely.
be here.
Well, I am so glad to hear that. And my friends, thank you so very much for tuning into Business Minds Coffee Chat. We'll be back next Saturday morning at 8:30. And until then, keep learning and growing. Please take Charlie's words to heart and do a kind act. And we will see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care, all.